This podcast is brought to you by Flipper, a marketplace to buy and sell websites, stores, and digital real estate. Plot your own path. Become a boss by buying a small online business at Flipper. Simply visit flipper.com/techtalks for a free consultation and 50% off fees. That's FLIPPA, flipper.com/techtalks. If you do visit, let me know how you get on. But now, let's get the show started.
Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where we bust a few myths and perceptions every day on this show and explore how technology is transforming the old ways of doing things and solving real-world problems. For example, did you know that we are growing enough food to feed the world's population twice over? And yet more than 2 billion people experienced food insecurity in 2019 alone. And if I said, what does IoT mean to you and what's that got to do with anything, I suspect you wouldn't think of an agnostic solution that enhances, not replaces all those existing assets and systems to give access to data previously unattainable in the food retail industry. Yes, Neil, but the industry cannot afford that kind of scale or tech investment, especially at this moment in time, I hear you say. Well, today's guest is Jason Murphy from IMS Evolve, and he's going to share how they are enabling the digital transformation of the food retail sector without the requirements for costly capital investment, infrastructure overhaul, or unnecessary downtime. And that technology is currently in use across as many as 20,000 sites globally. So buckle up and hold on tight so I can beam your ears all the way to London here in the UK so we can speak with Jason Murphy from IMS Evolve. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, hi Neil. My name's Jason Murphy. I'm the Managing Director for Global Retail for IMS Evolve. And my role really is to lead all our customer engagements with retailers, which is predominantly food retailers. And spend most of my time between here and North America, or I used to anyway, before lockdown. Had to get out of Dodge quite quickly from the States when the lockdown came in. And really that role has been born out of quite a long DNA for myself in retail, a 30-year career, in store ops, in maintenance divisions, energy divisions, food safety, so heading teams around business transformation in those areas. And I was then a user of the IMS application, so really put it to the test in terms of how it could drive business improvements for that organisation. And now what I do is spend my time working closely with our customers around how to deliver the IMS solutions into their business, but also really realising our vision of better choices made possible. So how do they get value from the applications and that new reality that creates for them? And really supporting them with some of that business transformation that can be required to get that value.
It sounds like we have something in common here, because pre-lockdown, I did spend a lot of time in the US for various tech events, which seems like a lifetime away now.
It does, yes.
My last event was in Chicago in March. I think it was St. Patrick's Day. And the whole of Chicago was pretty desolate, and the country was shutting down on the Tuesday, and I flew home on the Sunday on a plane with about 20 people on. So it sounds like you had a similar experience. When did you get
I did. Yeah, I was in Philadelphia. We were midway through a 2-week pilot install, so supporting our teams out there. So we managed to do the first week and allow a local contractor to finish the work for the second week. Without our support. But yeah, I was probably the same as yourself watching those press conferences from President Trump going, is he going to add the UK to this fly ban? And then frantically trying to get a flight back within 24 hours. And actually I managed to get one back via Twitter and BA's Twitter feed. So I couldn't get through on any of their helplines, but their social media team managed to get me home just before lockdown. So yeah, it was an interesting time. So and I do miss the travel.
Well, I was just about to say, because the travel thing is not as glamorous as it sounds. And I'm just getting to the point now where I'm really, really missing it. So it sounds like you're the
Yeah.
same. You're missing it now.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't spend more than probably 3 to 4 weeks in the UK at a time. So this is the longest I've been in the UK for about 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
And effectively lived almost in for about 2 years down in Northwest Arkansas while we were doing a big implementation in the US. So I do enjoy the travel. I think the saddest I've been during lockdown, which has been quite busy for me, was seeing my cabin bag in the corner of the room with dust on it. I actually had a moment when I saw that. Hasn't been anywhere for 3 months, which means I haven't.
Now, before we talk about the great work that you're doing and how you're leveraging technology, can you tell me a little bit more about the scale of the problem as we're growing enough food to eat to feed the world's population twice over? And yet more than 2 billion people experienced food insecurity in 2019 alone. So can you expand on that problem for me?
Yeah, so there's a real dilemma, isn't there, around we feel quite food rich, but there's such a high incidence of food poverty. We waste such a high percentage of the food we produce. I think in America, the number I saw was 40% of all food produced goes straight to landfill, but they themselves have a really high incidence of food poverty. So what we're looking to do is really face into some of those problems and, the knock-on effect of those problems. So food waste is one thing, but the impact of landfill, methane gas, the impact on the environment, the impending crisis around food availability by 2050, are some of the things we're really trying to face into. And then from a technical point of view, we are working with really large retailers and really large retail estates. And what we're looking to do is extract, and normalize millions, if not billions of points of data a day across multi-generational control systems, large disparate estates that have built up over years and acquisitions. And then we're really facing into some of the really huge mission critical assets like refrigeration and heating, ventilation and lighting that can really make a difference around some of those problems such as food poverty, food waste and environmental issues. So I think that's really where our technology faces into. We're very focused on the core purpose of the retailer because the IMS was been developed over the last 20 years since the turn of the century in food retail to solve problems for food retailers. And as those problems pivot and shift, and I think recently we've seen a real acceleration in some of those challenges for retailers. I think it's more critical than ever that we can, get the data in a place where it can be used in real time to face into these issues.
And can you tell me a little bit more about the benefits that can be gained from just integrating effective IoT solutions in the food retail sector? Because there's such a big difference that can be made here, isn't there?
Yeah, it's absolutely huge. So, effectively what we're doing is creating an IoT software layer over the existing infrastructure and those mission critical assets and customer critical assets. And then deploying our AI or our algorithms, however you'd like to describe it, in real time on that raw data to enact and automate business processes. And what that allows us to do once we have control of that data and have that data working in real time is really then point it into benefits such as we've already spoken about, reduction in food waste. And we've seen reductions up to 50% in a food retailer with an effective IoT solution in place. But also those knock-on pieces for customers around great food quality. It lasts longer in their home because its temperature regime has been kept well and efficiently. But while we're getting these assets to run well, there's a huge side effect around the energy efficiency and the energy costs. And if you look at things like food retailers in the UK, 40% of their energy use is refrigeration. In the US, that balances because of the demand for HVAC and cooling in the store environment. It balances out a bit more. But the areas we face into really do, are high cost and high importance to the food retailer. And as well as this, once we're connected up, we use a combination of edge-based, which we're really strong around to manage that data in real time, but also using cloud applications to connect in other applications into that data. So, if you can connect what's happening in real time at the edge in the store all the time against what's happening with the workflow, say, i.e. refrigeration needs fixing, so we can get that work done quickly and efficiently and improve availability for customers, but also measure the impact of that fix, because we're still looking at the data in real time when we're connected through these different applications. So it's a really, I don't think I've been using the application in anger since around 2012. And, we pointed it into so many different opportunities, and that, we get really excited by the what if and the art of the possible, and really seeing that deliver big outcomes for the food retailers.
I was just thinking there that one of the things that really stands out is the fact that also it's an agnostic solution that enhances but doesn't replace all those existing assets and systems. And in doing so, it's actually giving access to data that was previously unattainable. But can you expand on that a little for me as well?
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting and important part around what we do. So, the step into IoT and digitalization within facilities management and within retail, it could be a too high a cost hurdle if you had to replace your existing infrastructure to make it IP addressable or more efficient in driving its data into the cloud. So what we do is, through that edge technology, is we connect into the existing infrastructure that's there, allowing that to do its job it's designed to do, but without that huge capital hurdle. This could be hundreds of millions of dollars for a big US retailer in terms of capital replacement. We remove that need, and just through an edge device and edge technology, connect into that existing infrastructure and bring that data into an IoT layer that can then be used. And I think the really important part for us is use it in real time. So cloud has a place for me, particularly in connecting other assets. I think big data and its whole drive to the cloud, it is a really popular opinion at the moment. But we like to drive that data to work in real time at the edge by just putting the algorithms on top of it. And then being really empathic to that controls infrastructure, because some of the controls infrastructure we connect to is over 20 years old, and it works very effectively at controlling a HVAC system or a fridge system or a lighting system. But we need to make sure we are empathic to that infrastructure, allow it to do its job, and then use the data that's attainable to run processes separately. And that's the important thing we do, is we take the data and run the processes on top of it. So we don't run them through the controls infrastructure. We just use those to get the raw data and put it to work.
And if we zoom out, I'm curious, do you think that this kind of connectivity could actually encourage wider uptake of transformational IoT solutions? Because it really feels like it could, and it should.
Yeah, and I think that's, I think the interest in the industry that we work within is quite insular, particularly the controls industry. They've got models that are based upon hardware sales with software contained within it that do a particular job. But actually, in that competitive landscape, everyone, has to have a little bit of keeping, what's new to themselves. So, if we approach retailers with, if you want to get better, you need to replace everything, particularly in the current climate. And I think that climate's accelerated recently in terms of cost, profitability. Retailers are struggling for survival. They were with the rise of digital-only retailers before COVID, and with the increased cost of doing business that they've had now since COVID. So even though sales are great, the margins have been heavily impacted. We need to get to a place where we're bringing them solutions and working together more collaboratively, where we're not asking them for huge investment, but we're using what's there to make them better and help them be better. And I think if we can get to a point of collaboration, once, with this data now accessible and available in real time, similar to, if you think about a smartphone, that's an analogy I like to think about. A smartphone isn't actually smart, it's the applications that make it smart. But what it does is gives a platform for multiple applications to sit within, and allow the user much more benefits from that one platform. So now we can create that platform and give access to that data. If we collaborate well, then there's lots of quick wins and benefits that could be brought just by dropping new applications onto that data. And then once we've got the applications on the data, new benefits are released just by updates. as we see from our phones. So I think there's a huge step forward to be made if we utilize this data layer well.
As we record the podcast today into a rumoured to be recalling in the administrators, and it seems that the whole of retail is going through a huge change at the moment. So do you think it's more important now more than ever that retail technology is both adaptable and flexible in this post-lockdown world?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, it's an interesting one. When I came back from the States, I reached out to a couple of my former colleagues from different retailers to say, can I help? Because I thought, retailers looked under pressure. So one of them responded. My offer was to fill toilet rolls because it felt like that was one of the biggest challenges back then in March. So one of my former colleagues reached out and said, can you help me with social distancing, managing the absence in the store, and bringing in the whole, the new processes and routines that are needed now as we manage COVID. So I spent 3 months in the store doing my role, but also helping the store. And it was really interesting to see, the impact of retailers, that, a seismic impact. Retailers are very good operationally and are very planned operationally. And actually to have this sudden impact, a surge of sales and impact around availability, and then having to keep customers and colleagues safe, because the food chain had to continue, didn't have the luxury of being able to close its doors. It was a huge challenge. And I think, what that's given them is, an acceleration of that landscape where customers are moving to online. And I think the retailers did really well with accelerating that capacity, and they're managing that really well now. But also what it really woke them up to is they need to have control. So we were contacted to talk about strategies in the US where they wanted to change heating and cooling strategies to extract air out of the stores quicker. Some of their existing processes were impacted by lockdowns in different countries where they've offshored their help desks. So the ability to respond to a situation in real time has become much more important to them. And I think the other piece I think we've got, particularly for all retailers and food retailers, is that the cost of doing business has risen dramatically. So they're going to have to find ways of recovering margin, being more efficient in what they do, and be, sort of just drive more efficiency into their businesses to regain some of that margin. So yeah, seismic shift.
I've had countless emails from listeners over the last few weeks talking about their fears and concerns around job security, while also seeing their interest rates on their savings drop considerably. And as a result, many are beginning to look at how they can invest in their future in an uncertain time. Could digital assets be the answer? Now, you might remember that I spoke to Blake Hutchinson, CEO at Flipper, on episode 1194 about how to buy digital assets and websites. In a nutshell, Flipper is a marketplace that you can buy and sell websites, stores, and digital real estate that are just ready to go. So if you do have dreams of running your own successful online business, or perhaps you're looking to exit your existing online business, my friends at Flipper can help you buy and sell. So if you're interested and want to find out more, please visit flipper.com/techtalks. That's FLIPPA.com/techtalks for a free consultation and also 50% off all fees. But now, back to the interview. I think for many people listening, though, when they hear that IMS Evolve can deliver digital transformation for food and the retail sector without the requirements for costly capital investment, infrastructure and overhaul or unnecessary downtime, they might think, well, that sounds too good to be true. So I've got to ask, how do you do that?
It's not easy. I wouldn't want it to sound easy. So what we generally find, particularly within food retail, is that they'll have undergone a level of digitalization within their controls infrastructure. So the majority will have IP addressed their controls at some point. Although I'm finding retailers across the globe that haven't done that. So we take a couple of different approaches. One, if the asset control infrastructure is IP addressed. We just drop onto the network and extract the data. And that is as simple as, and in the US, we did 5,300 stores in 6 months with a large retailer in terms of installing and bringing online and going live. So we just plug in to the network and pick up the controls infrastructure off the network. So that's the ideal, and that is really quick and just requires a solid state PC at the edge to do that. So it's really cost effective. Or we can use that solid state PC to create an infrastructure, and we have lots of methodologies about bringing quite dumb controls, legacy controls online using PLCs, independent PLCs and connectors. So we can, for really low hurdle costs, create that IoT infrastructure for a retailer, and we can do it really quickly as well. But I don't want it to make it sound easy. So it's complex, and it's been built up over 20 years of knowledge of solving these problems. We have it's interesting, IMS has been born out of retailers, really great technical brains, but also guys that are really experienced and had strong backgrounds in the refrigeration, HVAC and controls industry. So they're really our problem solvers, our subject matter experts. So we like to face into complex issues around connectivity and get them done. So, and we want to be always infrastructure light. We don't want lots of boxes and connectors and different applications extracting data. We want to create a really effective and cost-effective IoT layer, and then get our software to work on the data.
I was speaking to a guest recently about supply chain issues, and they were telling me that if you were to order a certain brand of pizza, takeaway pizza, straight away the app or the website will tell you who's cooking it, when it goes in the oven, and who's going to deliver it. It's like almost every aspect of that supply chain is completely transparent and you can see it.
Yeah.
But I mean, what would it mean when your technology is deployed across the entire food retail supply chain? Because I think there's tremendous scope there, isn't there, to increase transparency?
There is, and that's something we're really excited about at the moment. Can't talk a huge amount about it yet, but we're about to kick off a project working with a food manufacturer, retailer, University of Lincoln, who we work really closely with. We've actually got a research centre where we've built a store up on Lincoln University's grounds. So we are looking at actually all the available technologies applied across the food chain and using our technology as a hub, things like blockchain, and our technology to track and trace food across a particular type of food across the food chain, and really understand the impact of all the different parts of the food chain on the quality of that product, and to really enhance the traceability. Because I think, from a food retail point of view, since Horse Meat Gate, which feels like quite a long time ago, traceability in the food chain has become more and more of an issue, and it's a hugely complex chain. So we want to really look at how do we deploy technology across the food chain from farm to the customer leaving a store, and maybe beyond in the future with smart fridges and stuff, to really understand the impact of things like temperature control and product control on the food chain. So I think you're right, there's a huge opportunity, and it's one that we're really keen to explore, and we'll be doing so very soon. So maybe I can come back in the future and talk about that one.
Absolutely. And I'm also curious, I always like to take a peek behind the curtain, and as someone that's working right in the heart of this industry, how have you seen high levels of technology investment in the retail sector, enabling supermarkets to adapt relatively quickly and ensure the whole nation stay fed? Because as consumers, we don't get to see all that side of things. But is that what's happening?
Yeah, I mean, it's incredible. So I left Tesco's 5 years ago, and I was fortunate enough to work through the Terry Leahy era, seeing Tesco grow incredibly quickly and incredibly efficiently into the short-lived Philip Clark area, where he really drove a focus around multi-channel or omni-channel, whatever phrase people want to use around it. So I saw things like scan as you shop and self-scan, and all of those type of technologies come in many years ago, and they've really come to their fore. And Tesco's was a lead retailer around home shopping, home delivery, and to see those pieces that are in place, those digital technologies that are in place, really coming to their fore during a crisis was incredible. And seeing customers, I really like to look at sort of the law of diffusion innovation and how people adopt to change. So it's definitely pushed us much into the early majority phase now around things like scan as you shop, the amount of customers we had to help use the handsets when they first come into stores. They've obviously not used them before, but the desire to have control over their shopping experience and reduce contact points to stay safe drove that change. If you asked me that question probably six weeks ago, I was really mulling over the idea of customer flow, customer tracking technology, because a lot of this technology, and there's a lot of players in this field that are looking for business cases to sit within retail and a home within retail. And I thought this could be a real opportunity for it because of people's concerns around safety. The possibility of taking an effective track and trace app and linking it into customer tracking, customer control, flow control in stores and around the store could be a real opportunity for it. But I think in 6 weeks on, and I think we're seeing it this week, people's attitude towards COVID and safety is really relaxed. I'm not sure 3 months was enough to really have, impacted a permanent change around people's behaviours. Some it will, the early adopters and stuff. But I think there was an opportunity. I'm not sure it will find a place because it's quite a big investment for a retailer. And if this feels like a one-off, and even if there's a second wave, it could be seen as a one-off. Would they really want to invest, or can they just put resource onto the problem, which is what they did currently around social distancing and customer control, customer flow control. So they just built teams that would manage that locally in stores. So I think it could have a really cool place if people could get over privacy and sort of safety over their own privacy. But I'm sort of doubtful that will come to fruition now. I'm happy to be wrong. I think it could be really effective.
Yeah, it's interesting you say if you would have asked that question 6 weeks ago, things might have been different because all the tech headlines now are flow tracking, footfall analytics, and IoT connectivity across the cold supply chain. So do you think technology has been the big winner of the lockdown period, or is it more likely that they're putting more resources into it?
Yeah, I think there's a mixture. So I think that the customer pieces that we saw around speed of shop, safety of shop, and controlling their own shop, whether that's online or in a store, massive winner, really helpful, and a really big push in adoption. And I've seen people like Sainsbury's where they weren't an early adopter of sort of things like scan as you shop. They've introduced their own apps that they're really trying to get customers to use, where the customer can use their own smartphone. So I think that change of behaviour in the way people shop. I don't know about yourself. When I first moved to online shopping, I went from a place of I want to select all my fresh stuff myself to that's 2 hours of my life that I never want to use again going around the store. So it's amazing how we can change our attitude towards shopping. And I think there's definitely, without that technology in place, this would have been much more difficult. I think if I could have foresaw this, I would have bought shares in the Perspex industry because that's definitely been a big winner around social distance and safety within stores. I think we would need to see more of these type of events to see other technology really find a foothold and be part of that win. I think it can be managed through people currently. If it becomes the new norm really is the new norm, then I think they'd need to look at it differently. And retailers, if they can use technology to replace people and put those people into doing more customer efficient jobs, then they'll do that if the return on investment's there. I think definitely in the supply chain, I saw shelves empty here, then flew to America and saw the Americans empty shelves even quicker than the Brits could. That ability to pivot and resource and re-merchandise stores, rationalize range within toilet rolls from 30 or 40 SKUs down to 6 white toilet roll SKUs very quickly. That level of digitalization and resource. I saw lots of new brands arriving very quickly that hadn't been sourced in the store before or sold in the store before. And that, I think without that connected supply chain and that ability to pivot sourcing and pivot merchandising in stores, we would have been in real trouble, particularly on some key staples.
Now, I'm going to ask you to look into your crystal ball now and
Oh.
say, what is next for the industry? And also, what role do you see IMS Evolve playing in that future too?
Yeah, so I think sort of spoke about it a little bit already. I think UK or world retailing has entered a new era, as we know. I think they're going to be very focused on efficiency of investment. I think there's less money for them to invest, and I always think the last sort of 4 or 5 years has been a really exciting time to work with retailers and try and bring more efficiency to them, because what they've been doing is investing in customer-facing strategies to around digitalization. And what that's meant in real terms is a reduction in those things that aren't an imminent threat to the retailer. So sales is obviously an imminent threat. If you've got Amazon knocking on your door, starting to do fresh food, and you've got to be able to respond to that as a retailer. And actually what that does tend to do is a move away from investment in things that aren't so imminent, such as the infrastructure of the store, the facilities of the store, and the desire to sweat the assets and use them for longer. If we go back 10 years in the heyday of energy saving initiatives, because all the burning platforms that were lit around the future cost of energy, retailers were investing huge money in initiatives and technology to reduce energy costs. That money's not there anymore. So I think the opportunity now is to use software, which is much more flexible to drive benefits. And we've really got to stand alongside these retailers, understand the challenges they're facing, and go, how do we work better and more effective for them, and actually give them more value. So I think we're entering into a really interesting period with retail. Not just non-food. I think non-food, the threat to non-food retailers is more obvious, and we've seen many disappear over the last few years. But I think even for food retail, it's going to be an interesting challenge for them, as how do they get better for customers while dealing and working in a world that is less margin rich and cost higher. So I don't know if that's really my crystal ball. I think I'm more focused on what do we need to do more for them, what more benefits can we bring to them, and how can we collaborate with others so that retailers get more benefits. I think that's where my mind is really at the moment.
Well, there's so many talking points there on delivering digital transformation for the food retail sector, but without the requirements of costly capital investment, infrastructure overhaul, or unnecessary downtime. So I suspect there's going to be a lot of people are going to want to find out more. So can you point them in the direction of how they can do that, and also contact your team if they've got any questions? Yeah,
so we're obviously on the web at IMS-Evolve.com, or really active around LinkedIn. So happy for people to connect with me there or connect with the organisation there. But we do have contact pages on the web. So more than happy to continue the conversation and look at the art of possible with others. So that really excites me. Give me a challenge. Let's see if we can solve it for you.
And there, the gauntlet has been thrown.
My bravado suddenly ebbing after that initial statement, but anyway.
But I love how your agnostic IoT platform is delivering improvements in energy efficiency, maintenance, and productivity and operations. But as with almost every guest I have on here, this isn't an overnight thing. It's a 20-year overnight success story.
Okay.
So much work in there, isn't there?
Yeah.
But more than anything, just a big thank you for sharing that story with me today.
Neil, thank you. I appreciate you having me on the podcast.
There's some big takeaways in that conversation from me, such as the huge benefits to be gained from integrating effective IoT solutions across that food retail sector. And by that, I mean everything from improved refrigeration efficiency to improved customer experiences. But many organisations are unable to see significant return on investment from those IoT projects due to high capital investments or lack of scalability. But agnostic solutions like this that enhance, not replace existing assets and systems, actually provide data that was previously unavailable. So I really do think that such connectivity could encourage wider uptake of transformational IoT solutions. And I think retail technology that enables them to be adaptable and flexible post-lockdown. And I'll be walking away from today's conversation thinking, what if this tech was deployed across the entire food retail supply chain? Food for thought indeed. See what I did there? Sorry, I can't help myself sometimes. But as always, let me know your thoughts. Email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com. My website is techblogwriter.co.uk. There you'll find out how you can work with me, links to 1,250 other episodes, and all my social channels as well if you wanted to contact me on there. So I hope you enjoyed this one as much as I did. I'm also hoping to get Jason back on the podcast later this year. But more than anything, just a big thank you for listening. And until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.